Holla ballers, what's going on, Preacher? Well, it's confirmed. It's happening. We are not going to get flying mounts in Warlords of Draenor. Mr. Bashiok, the mighty master himself, coming out and dropping what is in fact the biggest post we have seen about Warlords of Draenor. Especially considering it's just a single topic, but it is important. It's a big one. There are going to be a lot of people who are pissed off about this. Perhaps rightfully so, perhaps not. Let's have a talk about it. Bashiok actually did a very wise thing, and that is he tried to answer all the questions that people could throw at him instantaneously. This is why you would probably get mad about the fact that we're not going to be flying in Warlords of Draenor. Must be important to know here, he says at the bottom, is we're not definitely never going to add it. Really important that he adds that in, is that if they do change their mind in the future, if people are, it's not working out, people are getting too pissed off about it, maybe they can do something in the future. There's obviously going to be a rather long period of transition where they test the water to get rid of the initial reaction once people cap and don't get the ability to fly. But he has come out and addressed most of the concerns. Some of you, in fact maybe many of you, have never been in the game when there wasn't flying. Besides the leveling experience, flying has been in the game since the Burning Crusade, which is a very, very long time ago now. We've got to face facts. And it was originally a rather horrendous experience, it has to be said. As much as I understand the reasons, they're changing away from the flying model. They have addressed the questions which will be mostly coming from the vanilla players who had to deal with the rather outrageous and ridiculous flight point locations. Because frankly, they have never been good. You can try and do something which seems relatively simple right now in Mists of Pandaria to back this up. The flight to Tavern in the Mist from the Shrine of the Two Moons. If you've done your legendary quest, it's a flight you'll probably often done while you're AFK. And it goes through other flight points. It's literally across a wall. And being in a flying mount makes that significantly easier. As Bashiok points out, he's up to the beta testers. Hopefully they're relying on less beta testers but better beta testers this time around for Warlords of Draenor to actually point out, are there any flight points which are just a pain in the ass? The vanilla flight points are quite frankly a joke, and the ones you'll look at now and say they're not too bad, those are the revamped ones. The original flight points were so much worse. Some zones basically having one flight point. Ungoro in particular was a nightmare for this. If you had to do something in the south of Ungoro, you had to fly to the very far north. Desolus. Yes, mighty Desolus. Many of you would have only taken a little footstep or dipped your toe into Desolus, but when Desolus was a major part of leveling, Desolus's flight point was at the very north, and the only closest flight point to the south, which was in fact where the fucking quest hub was in fact in a different zone. It was in Faralas. Below it, you had to go into a different zone and then ride north. It was the quickest way to get there. Obviously, that is just completely unacceptable in today's day and age. We just cannot have that system. If you're going to force us to use flight points, then they have to be convenient. They cannot be loop-de-loop as they're described here. Cinematic aspects of the game is just taking a flight point, because frankly, nobody gives a shit. There are some really nice flight points in Mists of Pandaria for those people who actually don't mind watching the flight. But how many of us actually do that anymore? You can look at the flight to the Timeless Isle and say, oh, it loops under bridges, it's a really gorgeous view. Blizzard's obviously proud of the zone they've created, and a flight point is a wonderful way of expressing that, especially as those flight points were designed with people leveling in mind, or the lazy. But if we are using a flight point in today's day and age, then the likelihood is we're flying because we're going to the bathroom or we're going to grab a drink or something. Oh, I need to go over to near the Isle of Thunder and turn in some tier tokens or spend some points, then I'm just going to jump on the flight point and then I'm going to go and get a drink and come back. So all that cinematic aspect is, for the most part, wasted. I think we can all agree on that. So it's interesting that Bashiok is coming out and saying, you know what, they're not going to be cinematic, they're not going to be loop-de-loop, we're looking at efficiency. We're taking away the obvious, easy solution, which is you flying on a really, really fast mount, which is what we've been giving you throughout the history of WoW since the Burning Crusade. It's obviously far more convenient. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that away, but what we are going to do is replace it with efficient, to-the-point flight points that make sense, aren't ridiculous. You're not going to be riding across an entire zone because we've not thought about where players want to be. Which I think is... that was my biggest worry. My biggest worry was just, I don't trust you with flight points because you just put them in the stupidest locations. The way they're located in the cities was always bizarre. They were very far out of the way. Again, it's not a great issue most of you have to deal with anymore once you get up to a, what, level 50? I think you can get it 58 now flying, or level 60. Once you get past that, you never have to deal with it again. Most people would rather take the slow flying mounts that they can pick up in Hellfire Peninsula than actually use flight points, which kind of points out how bad they are and how people just don't want to use them. So it was cool that Bashiok came out and said that. His other points are pretty simple as well. We don't like the transition that occurs when you cap. The traditional model of you don't have flying, then you get flying. We saw in TBC you got it when you capped. We saw it in Wrath of the Lich King that you got it at level 68, I want to say. I know the Storm Peaks required you to go there at level 78 or whatever it was. And then, of course, in Kata, we just got it towards the end of month and all that kind of stuff. We don't want that anymore. We don't want that, because what happens is people get to their level cap and then suddenly the game just switches off for those players. The entire world becomes immensely redundant, which is a terrible thing to happen. They quest and quest and quest, or they level however they want to do. They level cap, and then they barely ever touch the floor again, unless absolutely necessary. This really limits Blizzard in how they can design various new areas of content. A good example of this for me would actually be something like Trial of the Colosseum. I forget the name, the Argent Dawn area, which is a wonderful ground-based piece of content. And you should be going there on foot, because it's designed to be seen from that perspective. Everything in the game looks immensely worse and immensely less interesting from up in the air. It just doesn't quite work. The other way they countered this in Wrath of the Lich King was to create areas which are mentioned in this post, where there are just cannons located everywhere, or Griffin Riders flying around just knocking you off mounts. My god, how annoying is that? Because you've created a world, you've given us this freedom to fly. We all remember the horrendous PvP area that was in the middle of the Wrath of the Lich King, the Northrend Isles, that if you went over there, you literally got knocked off your mount, and it was smack bang in the fucking middle of the world. So no matter if you're flying anywhere from zone to zone, you would have to run through it. Awful. They don't want to just make everything based inside a building. It's an aspect most of us didn't really think about when it comes to flying, but because you can access, obviously, the top of areas very quickly with a flying mount, they have to make everything inside buildings. Daily areas, new questing areas, new interesting piece of content has to be enclosed because people can fly above it. And if they have it just open world, people will just fly from point to point to point, and it loses a lot of its function and a lot of its desirability. So really cool to see that point addressed as well. Let's look at the downside here. No flying. Is there a downside? I think this is a valuable lesson for any of the new MMOs coming on the market, is that Blizzard has tried this out and said, you know what? It's a great idea in theory, is to fly around. And Lord knows it's very, very cool. It also gives us access to immensely cool flying mounts. The problem is it really destroys your gaming world. It actually absolutely crushes it. It really crushes the gaming world, and Blizzard has recognized that over the last few years. They've tried various things to make it work, but ultimately it just doesn't work. Why would you walk when you can fly? It's the easiest way to put it. There is no reason to. There is really no reason to. Most of you will have been of the opinion that if a mob is just slightly too far away, you would rather fly there on your mount because it goes so freaking fast, and you don't aggro things. You can fly up if things go wrong, and you literally are flying from mob to mob in some occasions. Unless they have to create segregated parts of the world, like the Timeless Isle, where there's a lot of functionality of the game disabled in order to create the environment that Blizzard is going for. I actually agree with this. I think it's fine. I'm not bothered about it. Flying was a solution and a requested thing. Like most things, like player housing. People want these things. I want to be able to fly. It's very, very cool. But it also came from an era in vanilla where any form of travel was absolutely horrific. As I say, the old flight points were an absolute mess. We wanted to fly. It's as simple as that. The players demanded it, the players wanted it, but this is a clear example, again, of the harshness that is coming in Warlords of Draenor, which I welcome with open arms. And also another reason to clarify that what players want isn't always what's best for them or what's best for the game. Because we wanted to fly. And some of you will be pissed. No doubt. And you have kind of a good reason to be pissed, because we have a lot of very cool flying mounts. So we're now looking at the fact that we have collected, and some of you have collected several hundred mounts throughout the game. In fact, flying mounts have been the reward for a lot of raid achievements for a long time. I have many, many mounts which have come from completing hard raid content, which I just can't use in Warlords of Draenor. How many people have purchased with real money from the store flying mounts? And now they can't use them in Blizzard's new expansion. That stuff you have there is going to be limited to certain areas overall. That's not cool, is it? It's really not cool that some of your stuff is now rendered obsolete. And people will be like, yeah, you can still use it on the ground. Well, let's face facts. I don't want to ride a dragon on the ground. I don't want to do that. I was recently given by one of the community the Sky Golem. And it's very, very cool, especially when it's flying. And I love the fact that it has immense flying animations going along with it. That is a very sore point, is there is a lot of very cool stuff in the game that is now just not accessible. Now not accessible. It will make the game better, though. That's the message we can take away from this. And Bashiok has been very, very cool with actually addressing most of the issues that I had when we talked about it a few months ago. When the first inclinations of this came up, we had a discussion about it. I think he's covered it quite well. And this is the decision that is a good decision. It's a tough decision for Blizzard. This is one of those things, as we've seen recently with Warlords of Draenor, which is, look, firm hand time. This is what needs to happen to make the game better. Trust us when we tell you this is going to improve your experience, because now your world will no longer be empty. This is what the solution is. This is the reason for it. Your world will no longer be empty. You will start to see once again things like entire guilds racing across the plains in order to get to giant outdoor raid bosses, if we're going to be seeing that kind of level of content again. And let me tell you, most of you will have never seen a raid all mounted up, all wearing that super gear, riding across the floor, riding across the ground, and looking very cool doing it, because that kind of stuff is inspiring. It fills the world. It reminds you that there are armies in World of Warcraft. There are armies everywhere. Every guild, every decent raiding guild is an army. And we don't see them because they fly. We never see them. We don't look to the skies to see the bat signal or anything like that. We just don't see them anymore. Everyone goes about their business and they go in their own way, and they usually get there very quickly, so they're not actually in the air for very long. I'm glad this has been confirmed. I think it's a good decision. I am fully on board with Blizzard's stance over Warlords of Draenor, that we're going to be making some tough decisions here because we've tried everything out and it works this way. We think this is the best way to go because we're now going to repopulate our world. Looking forward to it, man. I want to see your thoughts on it, though. Let's go. Are you upset? You pissed? You mad? Or are you happy? See you later, guys. Bye.